Canada, but I have to.
I'm just going to pause it.
Welcome, everyone, and to this first parallel panel of the conference. I'm Michaela Collard. I'm based at the University of Nottingham and will be chairing this session. I'm linked to the ACRC mainly through their research in Dar es Salaam. But I'm happy to be able to facilitate this session. So it is the first of 3 sessions convened by the African Cities Research Consortium, looking at the political economy of urban reform in Africa. In this session, we'll be moving through 3 papers which sit quite nicely together. A first conceptual paper introducing the framework used in the ACRC project, which Professor Sam Hickey, the Deputy CEO of the ACRC, will present. We'll then have 2 papers presenting a political settlement analysis from first Accra with Abdul Ghaffar Abdullahi, and then Freetown presented by Jamie Hitchen. So Abdul Ghaffar will be speaking from the University of Ghana, and Jamie is affiliated to the University of Birmingham. We'll have 2-minute presentations from each speaker and then kick off the Q&A. Sam, do you want to begin? Shall I share your slides?
Thanks very much. Thanks, Michaela. And yeah, thanks for everyone's coming to this, the first of our 3 sessions with ACRC. So, did I send you those ones? Okay. So the ACRC, based in Manchester, is looking at the political economy of urban reform, and the conceptual paper, if you scroll down about 4 slides, sorry, I was only going to show you 2 slides here. We're working in 10 cities in sub-Saharan Africa at the moment, and what we're trying to do is to keep going down to the working papers, is to capture the sense in which problems in African cities are directly shaped by the political and systemic factors that shape how resources and institutions function. And we particularly focus on we use political settlements analysis to capture the ways, the sense in which, unless systems and institutions are working for powerful groups, that is, that they're allocating resources and status to powerful groups, then they will be blocked and re-engineered in order for them to do so. And we think that the notion of political settlements can add a great deal of value to current debates on urban politics in sub-Saharan Africa. But we don't think that's enough. If you go down to the next one, thanks. We want to show that the ways in which politics is filtered through systems, city systems that distributes resources and goods within cities, and then bring these together. The next slide, I think, Michaela. Oh no, I sent you with the wrong slides entirely. Just ignore them. So hopefully you've watched this online, so if you don't need these slides anyway. The additional part of our conceptual framework is what we're calling urban development domains. And these are what brings together politics and systems around particular urban development challenges. And we define domains in terms of fields of power, policy, and practice. These are constituted by multiple systems and actors. And domains we're seeing as highly political. They're sites of contestation between a whole range of bureaucratic, popular political actors who struggle to impose their interests and ideas. But they're also political because they distribute rents, legitimacy to ruling elites at national and city level, and offer legitimacy via votes in particular. So in my last 10 seconds, I'll just stress that although we're focusing on the politics in the 2 presentations that follow this, on Accra and Freetown, 2 of the 10 cities we're working in each of our cities, we have a team of people looking at the politics, a team looking at systems, and looking at 3 to 5 domains in each cities. So we've got over 60 ongoing research projects, and we're just giving you a taster now. There'll be plenty to share at future conferences. Finished.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam. Wonderful. Abdul Ghaffar, would you like to briefly recap your paper?
Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much. So maybe just learning from Sam, I will just suggest that we ignore the slides, and I just speak on top of my head in terms of what we are finding in Accra. So the paper, I mean, the part of the project that I'm leading is trying to understand the politics of development in Accra using the framework that guides the ACRC, the African Studies Research Consortium, which is the political settlement analysis plus kind of integrating that into systems analysis. So I'm undertaking a political settlement analysis of development in the city of Accra, trying to understand how the nature of Ghana's political settlement dynamics is actually shaping the development prospects of the city. The nature of the settlement, I mean, drawing on the framework, Ghana's political settlement is characterized by a kind of a very broad, dispersed power configuration, in the sense that you have a political context where elections are fought very closely between two dominant political parties. And each of these parties is highly vulnerable in the sense that they actually need to co-opt a wide range of groups in order to be able to remain in power. And these settlement dynamics have had kind of profound implications on the development of the city, which is generally characterized by the poor delivery of basic services in the context of rapid urbanization. One key thing that is worth noting about the city is its political importance. I mean, Accra is essentially the kingmaker in Ghana as far as presidential elections are concerned. It's very difficult for any of the two dominant political parties to be able to win presidential elections without making substantial inroads in the city, in the sense that the city has the highest number of registered voters in Ghana, and it's also very well known to be a swing voting city where elections actually swing back and forth between these two dominant political parties. And this kind of political context has had a lot of implications in the manner in which national level political elites have treated the city and most other cities in Ghana. So for example, I mean, given the city's political importance, various governments since the return to multi-party democracy in the 90s have refused to actually allow citizens to vote mayors directly, and city mayors remain presidential appointees, and appointments often based on partisan political considerations. Because of the important role that these mayors actually play in mobilizing votes for ruling parties and so on, there has been a lot of resistance in terms of opening up the space to direct citizen election. And there have also been very kind of rapid redemarcations of the city, which is actually undermining development in some ways, but which is actually facilitating the political objectives of national political elites in terms of exerting significant control over parliament. Unfortunately, there isn't really any strong centralized authority, and the city has been characterized by the creation of various multiple centers of power within the city that actually make coordination of development activities within the wider city more challenging. So I'll leave it there. Probably we can take up conversations at some point.
Excellent, thanks very much. I think Sam is going to very briefly summarize for Jamie on the Freetown case, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Please do watch Jamie's full presentation and read the paper. They're both excellent, co-authored with Felix Conte. Very briefly, Sierra Leone is a similar type of political settlement to Ghana and has similarly direct impacts on governance within Freetown. This is partly in relation to elites wanting to centralise power and stalling the devolution of responsibilities and authority to Freetown, and very much in terms of the lack of alignment between the ruling party at the centre and the opposition party, which is in charge in Freetown. And the ruling party directly undermines the opposition mayor, for example, appointing a chief administrator who seeks to undermine her work. She's tried to put in place a delivery unit, one of the several urban innovations we've seen around governance in African cities, to try and sidestep the bureaucracy, but in ways that haven't really come through yet. And the social foundations element of the political settlement come through strongly in Freetown as well. The mayor in Freetown always has to be a representative of the Creole, the native group within Freetown, in ways that often leads to tensions with other groups in power nationally as well. But please do have a look at the paper. I've only done a hatchet job on the depth that's there.
Thank you, Sam. Great. Well, we will open up to questions now. I'll kick off with a general question, and then if people would like to signal in the chat, either by just posting that they have a question they'd like to ask, by writing it out, I will then hand it over to you. So just for both our speakers to begin with, what would you say the added value of the political settlement analysis is for our understanding of urban politics, and what may be the actual or potential blind spots?
Sam, you want to go first?
Sam, you're muted. Sorry.
After you, Abdul Ghaffar, also Tim and Diana, my co-authors on the paper, as well as Seth, who's not here. But so Tim and Diana, please do help me out. After you, Abdul.
Okay, no, so thanks very much. I think overall, the emphasis that political settlement analysis places on inter-elite power relations is its main added value in terms of understanding the dynamics of urban politics in Ghana. I mean, especially when you compare this concept to previous concepts like neo-patrimonialism, which we just kind of try to explain relations in terms of between patrons and voters and so on. I mean, perhaps more than anything else, much of urban politics in Ghana is driven by the nature of central-local relations. And political settlement analysis actually provides a particularly useful lens for actually understanding the politics of central local relations in the city of Accra and in Ghana more broadly. I mean, city authorities are actually unable to prioritize the development of local communities over the political survival strategies of national elites, because mayors and a significant number of city council members remain in office at the discretion of the president, who actually appoints them. I mean, in terms of fiscal decentralization, city authorities also tend to lack financial autonomy. I mean, they can't borrow without central government approval. And what is important, and where one finds the value of political settlement analysis in understanding these dynamics, has been the ways in which various national political elites have actually resisted reforms that actually seek to address some of these problems, either in terms of the direct election of mayors by citizens or allowing city authorities to borrow substantially. I mean, all of these have actually been subtly resisted by national political elites during the past 2 decades. And therefore, I mean, if you employ a political settlement lens that actually places emphasis on the nature of inter-elite power relations in understanding these dynamics, you would kind of appreciate the value addition of this approach in understanding urban politics in the context of Ghana more broadly.
Excellent. So intra-elite power distribution, central-local dynamics, a lot of really interesting points here. Sam or Tim, would you like to add to that? Or Diana?
I've got a brief couple of points on the, I mean, I think political settlements analysis does respond really nicely to the flourishing of the literature on urban politics that, Michaela, you, Tom, and Lewis captured in the second ACRC working paper, the literature review you did for us. And what you get a sense from there is that there's an understanding, say, Sean Fox's work on the political economy of slums, that the ways in which post-colonial elites have reinforced the colonial heritage in terms of networks of exclusion around land registration, building codes, etc. He's captured very nicely in the political settlements approach. And then you have this flourishing of literature, which is quite dispersed. There's lots on the political economy around land, real estate, infrastructure. There's lots on politics, oppositional politics, central local relations. And there's lots on political sociology, issues of class, ethnicity, gender, but quite disparate. And I think the way in which Tim has reframed political settlements analysis to bring in, as well as Mushtaq Khan's focus on state-business relations and power concentration, to bring in the political sociology angle, it really helps us capture this broad swathe of the different strands in the literature. So I think it's really a great deal of added value by bringing work together and being more encompassing than other approaches. But other co-authors may have more specific points to make.
Tim, did you want to come in at all?
No, I'm happy to leave it at that with Sam's commendation.
Excellent. Okay, and Diana says the same. Right. Are there any other questions people would like to pose now, or comments? I do have some follow-up. Okay, Graham.
Sorry, should I just come in and say my question?
Yeah.
Turn on my camera. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. This is really fascinating. I really enjoy the work that you're doing, and I think it's really important and valuable. So thank you very much for organizing these sessions as well. I just had a question about the way we understand these sort of political settlement approaches, and particularly the extent to which there is space within them to understand sort of forms of contestation and the way these settlements are experienced sort of from the bottom up. Sort of how are they resisted, how are they just ignored or neglected, or how do people sort of get around them as they go about their livelihood activities or sort of urban livelihoods more generally? Is there space for things like protest? Is there space for things like everyday resistance? Is there space for, I don't know, manipulating sort of clientelistic structures that can sort of benefit people at the bottom of this? Yeah.
Brilliant. Who would like to begin? I might just take one question at a time, unless, if that's all right. Sam, would you like to begin on the conceptual point?
Sure, or Tim and Diana, do wave your hands if you want to jump in. I mean, I think the way in which the social foundations of a political settlements are captured do allow for those groups that have got varying degrees of power. So I do think it's not just about elite groups, it's about making other groups visible in the analysis. But I would agree that it wouldn't be the default position of many people using political settlements analysis to then look at the strategies used from below. There's a bias towards the incorporative strategies from above, I think, in relation to how those groups have then become included in elite strategies and so on. We are trying to sort of overcome this by our research strategy. So we're putting together teams of experts on political settlements analysis on the one hand, and expert researchers in informal settlements on the other. And we are actually going to take the analysis of elite urban, of city level power balance and the national political settlement to informal settlements and discuss that with communities, see what do they recognize this? Does this touch the everyday politics and how they understand power to work in informal settlements? And also do a kind of political settlement mapping of informal communities and slum areas to see how power works there and to try and join it up. So I think, yeah, we have extended analysis in ways that makes it possible to include it, but I think there's more methodological steps and more empirical work to do to join these things up, and look forward to reporting back on that. It's all in progress, but yeah, great question.
Abdul Ghaffar, would you like to add to that? Or,
Yes. No, so yeah, so there are there are certainly opportunities for mobilization. I mean, much of the challenge, I mean, within the specific Ghanaian context is the polarized nature of politics at the city level. So even though on the one hand, you have, I mean, occasionally getting citizens to kind of mobilize, the one key challenge that actually undermines this is the fact that most citizens actually tend to view themselves more, I mean, first and foremost, as belonging to particular political parties. In other words, I mean, even though there are opportunities for mobilization and there have been moments of mobilization, contestations, and so on and so forth, benefits, I mean, largely tends to be skewly distributed in favor of particular citizens, depending on which particular political party is in power. I mean, this has been one of the key reasons why there has been a challenge of pushing for this idea of direct election of mayors, because it provides certain advantages for those for ruling parties to enable local level actors to distribute patronage in ways that help sustain national level political elites in power. So even even though there are kind of these kind of contestations, mobilization, and so on, you see evidence of politicization as well, because it has implications in terms of who benefits from the distribution of various public goods at any given moment in time.
Excellent. Tim, I saw you raise your hand very briefly. Did you want to come in?
Yeah, sure. I think that Sam put it very nicely, but I also think that sometimes when I try to explain political settlements analysis, I say that it's about trying to get at the sort of mental maps of high-level politicians. So a high-level politician will think, you know, in terms of my political survival, who do I need to co-opt? Who do I need to repress? Who do I need to buy off or sideline in some way? And as such, I think those mental maps are going to focus on things like electoral dynamics, key economic actors, or instances of overt resistance. And I think that they're probably a little bit less likely to focus on forms of passive resistance. So when someone like James Scott talks about the ship of state running aground on 1 million acts, on a coral reef of 1 million acts of passive resistance or what have you, I feel that politicians are often sort of caught out by those forms of passive resistance, and political settlements analysis might also be. And I think that that's why it is probably important to complement political settlements analysis with other forms of approach if you want to get a truly holistic picture.
Thanks, Tim. We'll go back to some more questions. There's a comment and answer from Diane in the chat, but I'll move to Vanessa. You've had your hand up for a while, and then Arabella, I've seen your question in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you for the fascinating presentations. And it was very nice to engage with all this in advance. And I thought the format of the conference worked very well to understand the complex idea, which is very unfamiliar to me. So from that unfamiliarity, I'm going to ask first, I have 3 questions. The first one is, can you explain the methodological tensions raised by political settlements analysis in terms of scale? And I was struggling to understand what was whether we were looking, for example, in the case of Ghana, whether we are looking at political settlements as happening at the urban level or at the national level, or is like the incorporation of both that happens through the political settlements analysis, which is something that is mentioned briefly in your working paper, but it was not entirely clear to me. So perhaps you can elaborate on that. My second question is the applicability of political settlement analysis in a more broad context, in an international context, and particularly when a lot of the issues that are happening. A lot of the political economy of cities in Africa and in other places are shaped by forces that expand beyond the city and perhaps beyond the nation state, whether it's through international forms of investment and finance, but also through programs of international development and so on. The third question would be about the normative implications of political settlement analysis, because I was not entirely understanding whether we are offering a critical kind of perspective, I don't know, a la Scott, or like Tim was mentioning Scott. So is it a critical analysis of what is going on, or is like a propositional also a propositional theory? And if it's propositional, what could be the contradictions and difficulties of that proposition? Thank you for all the great presentations.
Thanks, Vanessa. Again, should we just, Abdul Ghaffar, would you like to start this time?
Okay, no, thanks very much. So, I mean, I would speak to particularly the question about methodology, and I mean, at what level of political settlement analysis are we undertaking? So their approach is to understand both national level political settlement dynamics, as well as the nature of power relations at the city level, and how these two actually interact. I mean, the project is designed in a manner that our understanding is that if you really want to understand the politics of the city, you need an understanding of national political settlement dynamics as well. You need to understand the nature of power relations, distribution of power, and how various actors are able to influence decision-making at the city level, but also the interaction between the center and the city in terms of how the national and the city level political settlement dynamics actually interact. So this particular project is actually based on qualitative data collection, trying to understand the nature of power dynamics, not just at the national or the city level alone or in isolation, but more importantly, the interaction between these and how these shape prospects for the delivery of various services at the city level.
That's really well put. Sam, would you like to speak to maybe the other two questions?
Sure. I mean, I think the question of scale is critical, and we're working on it. I think most political forms of political analysis are methodologically nationalist. There's a bias there to the nation state as the main level of analysis. We're trying to, in our framework, we've got a very clear level of city level power balance where we're trying to work through. I think it does depend on the level of autonomy within cities as to how much you need a multi-scalar analysis and how much you're just really analysing the ways in which the national political settlement is directly shaping things in cities. Working in Lagos in the next phase is probably going to be the most interesting challenge there in our set of countries. In terms of international, we're very aware of this. We do think that those factors are really important. We have some of them off stage as exogenous, but we're really interested in working out the extent to which they reach the city and the way in which they get reshaped as they get filtered through the interests and ideas of dominant players and institutions, whether it's ideas around what type of city, Dubai, modernity, and so on, and how that shapes elite visions of what type of city should be built, whether it's flows of finance, which benefit certain forms of infrastructure development and not others, or whether it's the nature of the sort of capitalists involved as well. And we don't just look at foreign capital. It would be interesting when we're looking at housing and also some issues around land and connectivity, diasporic and domestic elite investment patterns are really significant in terms of how land gets used, the different value that gets taken on, and what this means for the potential for urban development. So we are trying to capture the ways in which these international flows of resources, ideas, and actors become refracted through the political settlements and city level power balance. In terms of the normative nature, I think political settlements analysis is much more a realist approach than a normative one. Nothing's ever unbiased. Every choice brings in certain forms of ideas around who has power and who doesn't to it. I think that's an important point to make. I think there's two different ways of responding to your question, Vanessa. One of which is that we found even a very realist mapping of elite mind maps, as Tim points out, to be very useful to subaltern groups, to social movements. We worked with women's movements in a previous research project, and they found this really, they were just doing this anyway. This was part of their strategic approach, was to understand elite power and mental maps from this type of perspective. And the second one is, and I think there's going to be a new generation of work in this area, which links up with critical political theory. We're working with Claire Cummings at GDI, who uses Bob Jessup and other Gramscian theorists to try and build out ideas and more cultural understandings of power into political economy analysis. And that's more normative and critical in the way that you're pushing us, I suspect, pushing us towards here. Thanks.
Brilliant answer. I might just take a group of questions together since we're coming to the end. First, because it's been in the chat for a while, I'll read out Arabella's question and then come to the two others. So Arabella writes in the chat, I'm interested how you operationalize the tension between focusing on domains and thinking in systems terms about interconnectivity. Do different domains confer different political settlements? Where does this leave the examination of issues such as disaster risk and climate adaptation, which are mobilized or not through and across the politics of multiple domains, and where political action in one domain can have strong consequences for resulting risks in another? Big question, but just so that we can get to everybody before the end of the session, Abdi Fattah, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I first of all, to the speakers, I really very much enjoyed the work they have done, and it is very illuminating. So thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to listen to your interesting presentations. Having that said, I was just wondering, when we're talking about political settlements, it definitely kind of comprises different constitutive elements, things like power production, how power is exercised, how power is monitored. So all of these components are sitting within this idea of political settlement in terms of analysis. So I was wondering, and I definitely understand that contextuality is also very important in the idea of the concept of political settlement. So I was wondering, different countries have different political, social, and economic realities, and this very much kind of informs how the political settlement evolves. So I was wondering then, these different elements, things like elections, which is how power is produced, and how, let us say, city, urban land management, or city as a whole is governed. Different countries have different, can I say, priorities or different stages of stability. So for instance, when you're talking about Ghana, it is a little bit advanced democracy when we're talking about democracies in Africa. So the things we'll be talking about is like governance, and those are the kind of constituent element of a political settlement that is very important for analysis. But in the case of, for instance, like Mogadishu, then the whole thing shifts towards how power is produced. So the key thing in a political settlement then becomes how elections are conducted. So all of a sudden, political settlement becomes very important when the election cycle comes. That is when elites fight over the power. So you may have 4 years in which government might not be held to account as much as it should have been. And you have in South Africa, you have like countries like in South Africa where you are, the government is kind of held accountable throughout like the 4 years of cycle of the electoral term, in order for political parties to raise their profile. So wondering this contextuality of political settlement, maybe for the speakers to illuminate a bit about that aspect of contextuality in political settlement.
Okay, thanks very much. Mohammed and then Remy, if you want to just maybe briefly state a question, and then we'll probably run over. Obviously, I understand people may have to leave at 12:30, but if we can just get through this set of questions first. Mohammed.
Yeah, thank you, Michaela. So my question will be more relevant to maybe the Ghanaian case. It seems to me that the political settlement analysis somehow projects a very pessimistic, outlook. I was wondering, so until the end of, let's say, the NDC MPP, political, divide, is there any hope of perhaps developments in an area like, say, the Greater Accra? And then also, how does the nature of national level politics interact with local level power configurations such that perhaps the local level power can hold sway over the national level? So I'm asking, so if you take the case of the Ashanti region, where we have a powerful chief or king like the Ashanti king, would it have made any difference if we had same in the Greater Accra region?
Okay, thank you. Remy, would you like to ask the final question?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the fascinating presentations and the discussion. I think my question is a quick one, and it draws on Abdi Fattah's question around context and contextual dynamics. I wanted to know from the presenters, from your experience of applying the political settlements perspective or framework across 3 different countries, whether you have already identified like gaps from the framework itself, or if yes, which gaps have you identified, or whether you feel that the concepts is still fit for all cities. Thank you.
Excellent. I'll let the speakers answer what they can from any of the 4 questions we've just had. Sam, do you want to kick off this time?
Sure, briefly. I think Tim's going to come in as well on Abby's question. Arabella's question in the chat. I don't think different domains confer different political settlements. If there's huge rents and huge legitimacy in a given domain, then you could imagine that a significant shift in that domain could potentially influence the political settlement. But generally speaking, the bigger influence would be in the other direction, we anticipate from earlier work. We do agree with you that issues of climate risk and climate adaptation are cut across many domains, and we do have cross-cutting themes that we're looking at, particularly around climate change. We don't think it's yet a domain. It may be one of the problems is that there's not a coherent set of actors or epistemic communities within African cities on this topic that's dispersed across multiple domains. But we are going to try and capture that in some of our work. And to Remy's question, we're working on it. We're quite early in the process. We have a good sense that the different types that political settlements analysis gives us enables us to capture multiple contexts and make useful comparisons. But we're a bit too early in the process to talk about this, other than when you put Accra and Freetown together, there's some really obvious similarities given their similar types of political settlement, as you know from the 2 papers that have been online for a while now for this session. Over.
Abdul Ghaffar, would you like to?
Thanks very much. So just a quick response to the question that Mohammed posed about whether the political settlement analysis presents a very pessimistic picture in terms of, so is there any kind of room for progressive reforms and so on? I think the nature of the settlement provides both constraints but also actually opportunities for reform. I mean, if you understand the electoral dynamics within Accra, you would understand that one of the key reasons why there have been quite a number of recent efforts in developing various kind of deprived urban settlements. I mean, it actually has to do with the nature of electoral competition between these two political parties. I mean, one key example in 2018 was the current government's establishment of a special fund, I mean, the Zongo Development Fund. I mean, that was aimed at providing kind of financial resources for developing and subsequently actually transforming this into a full ministry of inner city and so on. And some of these kind of reforms are actually driven by the nature of electoral politics within the city. So they do provide opportunities for positive reforms as well. Your second point was whether I mean, assuming if this study was to be undertaken in Kumasi, where chiefs appear more powerful and so on, whether we were likely to be finding things different. I don't think actually that when it comes to issues around the cities, in my view, the Ashanti king is as powerful as the Ga merchants within Accra. I mean, if you remember the story of the Ashanti region where the king was actually able to get the president to sack mayors and so on and so forth. If you follow the history very closely, you will actually see similar developments within Accra. The appointment of mayors are actually not done without the support of traditional leaders. And there have been moments when the president had to change his choice based on recommendations from various vetting committees to choosing the chief's choice because of this emphasis that the president must always appoint an indigene as the mayor of the city and so on. So you see that kind of level of influence on the part of traditional authorities, not just actually in Kumasi, the second city, but also within the national capital as well.
Fantastic. I think we'll have to wrap it up there. There is a final question in the chat, which from Azana, which I will just read out. I think it resonates with a point raised by Graham at the very start, but Azana asks, Accra being a kingmaker constituency, to what extent disadvantaged groups, slum dwellers, street vendors, peri-urban farming communities, etc., use their voting rights to their advantage to pursue their collective interests? So maybe that hints at the kind of the way that a political settlements analysis can begin to address how some of these bottom-up pressures from more marginalized communities can influence the overall power balance and decision-making. I feel as though we should leave it there, though, so that people do get a lunch break before the next session. But thanks again to our speakers, and it's a really good start to the day. Enjoy, everyone.
Thanks, Mikara.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Next session starts at 1. See you all there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.